The greatest challenge of creativity, as I see it, lies ahead. We, of course, are saddened indeed by the events in Indochina. But these events, tragic as they are, portend neither the end of the world nor of America's leadership in the world.
Vietnam was the longest military engagement in American history, the most distant, the least relevant to the nation's concerns, and the most divisive in more than a century. The war affected every American. It cost more than $130 billion, siphoned money away from domestic programs, and destabilized the economy to the point of crisis. It proved that not even the richest, most powerful nation in the world had unlimited strength and resources. 2 million Americans served in Vietnam. 58,000 died there. More than 300,000 were wounded. Countless veterans suffered the chronic anxiety and depression of post-traumatic stress disorder, alcoholism, and substance abuse. Exposure to the chemical Agent Orange caused long-term medical ailments, including cancer, in thousands of vets. POW groups contend that some of the 2,500 servicemen listed as missing in action continue to be held in Vietnam against their will. No compelling evidence has proven this to be true. In 1982, the country took a step towards healing with the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. It has become a site of pilgrimage for veterans and all Americans. Vietnam revealed the limits of American power and eroded Americans' confidence in themselves and their government. In the years following the war, the United States questioned its role in world affairs and viewed each foreign engagement through the lens of Vietnam. This reaction came to be called the Vietnam Syndrome. Vietnam ushered in a decade of conflict between Congress and the executive branch that lasted well into the 1970s. For the U.S. military, the defeat forced a complete reevaluation from within that resulted in the modern technology-based fighting force of the 1980s and beyond. The armed services also introduced new policies for dealing with the news media. Reporters and journalists would cover future conflicts, but they would never again have the unfettered access they enjoyed in Vietnam. America's losses, however painful, paled in comparison to those of Vietnam. By the end of the war, the country was physically ruined. Nearly 3 million Vietnamese perished in the fighting. Half were civilian casualties. Millions of others were injured, maimed, or left homeless. In neighboring Cambodia, the U.S. invasion triggered a civil war and unleashed a reign of terror by the communist Khmer Rouge faction. By 1979, 1 in 5 Cambodians had become victims in the genocide of the killing fields. Millions fled political persecution in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos and took to the sea. To the world, these boat people symbolize the tragedy and desperation of Vietnam. With the fall of Saigon in 1975, Vietnam was reunited under communist rule as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The country had defeated the United States and was free of foreign occupation for the first time in a century. But, as Vietnam's Prime Minister recognized, we are plagued by problems. We do not have enough to eat. We are a poor, underdeveloped nation. Waging a war is simple, but running a country is very difficult. Under communist rule, millions of former South Vietnamese were persecuted. At the insistence of the United States, the international community turned away from Vietnam. Alienated by the world community and faced with enormous problems, Vietnam relied increasingly on the Soviet Union for aid. But in 1986, Vietnam declared communism a failed experiment and vowed radical change.
It's time that we recognized ours was in truth a noble cause. Let us tell those who fought in that war that we will never again ask young men to fight and possibly die in a war our government is afraid to let them win.
For the United States, the debate is still heated. Was Vietnam a noble cause? An unfortunate mistake? Or was it an immoral act of aggression and a waste of human life? Decades after the last Americans departed Vietnam, these questions remain unanswered, and the ghosts of Vietnam endure.